Snipers, you have to see what's happening to the Bitcoin price right now as our daily candle closed up 5%, decorrelating from the S&P 500. Equity markets closed with a red daily candle, but Bitcoin decided to decouple. And I want to talk about exactly why this is the case. And then there are two other things that are extremely important. But let's talk about the Bitcoin SPY chart. So the equity markets have been a little bit correlated with Bitcoin, but today we saw a decorrelation. And this isn't a surprise for those that have been tuned into the channel because Bitcoin outperformed the S&P 500 today. And I'll tell you exactly why I believe this is the case. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, snipers, by the way, if you support these midnight updates. So we all know what happened to Luna recently, a $40 to $50 billion project going to zero, right? It's the modern day Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff in equity markets had a $68 billion fund that eventually collapsed. And so this was a modern day version of that, with the cryptocurrency market entering extreme fear because of that. We saw Bitcoin decouple away from the S&P 500 while the S&P 500 went to test its previous weekly open. Bitcoin didn't get to do that yet. And this is where things get very interesting, snipers, because if the S&P 500 tested its previous weekly open, Bitcoin decorrelated from the S&P 500 today to the upside, which tells me that it is catching back up. Then that means that Bitcoin during this weekend, over the next 24 hours, maybe while you're watching this video, has the chance to test its previous weekly open, which sits at 34,000 US dollars. And what would that mean for the Bitcoin weekly candle? Well, it would mean that it would come to this previous weekly open at 34,000 and just mimic the weekly candle of the S&P 500 if it continues this decorrelation. Now, what's also very interesting about the S&P 500 today is the daily candle low was $1 shy of the previous week's candle low. That is a bullish puzzle piece because that means that the bulls defended that zone and it didn't decide to break into new consolidation lows. And that means that Bitcoin is more likely, as we've been saying, to test 34,000 than it is to come back down and test any prices below 26,700, which was the weekly candle low when we saw what happened to Luna and Terra. As a matter of fact, the same minute that Luna hit $0 US dollars, Bitcoin was at around 28,200 US dollars. And since then, we've never come back down there, which also strengthens the storyline that a year from now we could look back and say, man, Luna, Terra collapsed, Bitcoin capitulated with extreme fear, and we've yet to ever come down and test those levels ever again. That could be the bottom. You know, some people are saying it's not the bottom. We're looking for a bottom. But that storyline is still a potentially valid storyline that we can look back a year from now and say, Bitcoin saw extreme fear, it capitulated, and we've never tested those lows ever again, just like what happened in March of 2020 or what happened in November, December of 2018, where Bitcoin capitulated over mass hysteria and fear. In 2018, it was because of the BitMEX liquidations in 2018, it was because of some other specific reason. I forgot exactly what it was. But in 2020, it was because of the BitMEX liquidations that we saw Bitcoin capitulated 3,000, and then it never came back down to those lows. In 2018, what was it that capitulated us? The miners. The miners started to sell off because Bitcoin was moving sideways at 6,000, and then we saw capitulation from the miners. The miners ended up selling off. So those were two events that we can look back on and say, man, Bitcoin never came back to test those lows. This could be another one of those events. This could be that third event that we look back on and say, oh, for that 2022 cycle, that low was because of the Luna situation, just like in 2020 is because of the miners. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm all mixed up here. Because of in 2020 it was the BitMEX, and then in 2018 it was the miners. Anyways, you get the point. So that's with Bitcoin more likely right now to test 34,000 this weekend for the weekly candle to just mimic the S&P 500 as it is starting to catch back up. That is why Bitcoin was up today, but the S&P 500 wasn't. Because the S&P 500 didn't have a $40 to $50 billion project recently fall to zero. And so it just continued its normal, regular path. Bitcoin had something abnormal happen, as we've been saying, that could have potentially signaled a bottom. So two other things, and I'll wrap up this video. Sniper, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm once again if you support these four-dimensional updates. Let's watch the DXY potentially bearish engulfing weekly candle close. I know the 10-year treasury yield has just broke a major support level. And then lastly, let's monitor the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart for the close this week to see if we break 65,000 Satoshis. And with that being said, I think that is all that was significant on the charts today. And so I'll wrap up with this, snipers. Bitcoin against the money supply. We could make an argument that we already tested the 200-week moving average. I know a lot of people are saying there's a date with destiny here, but we could say that date with destiny has already occurred. And we know that there's been a high volume 7th red weekly candle, which in the past, these high volume red weekly candles have signaled bottoms. And so let's see what happens here. I'll wrap it up with this, snipers. The classic range that we're playing in right now has a resistance of 34,788, a support of 25,000. At this point, consolidating at the midpoint of the range, $3 billion worth of Bitcoin had to be sold off for Bitcoin just to come to 26,700. It doesn't look like in the near term there is that much sell pressure. And based on the 4-dimensional revolving part of the S&P 500, it is more likely for Bitcoin to come and test 34,000 right now than it is to see any further downside in the immediate short term to medium term. Once we get above 34,708, we can potentially talk about further upside targets. When it comes to altcoins, if Bitcoin dominance continues to move up and Ethereum to Bitcoin chart invalidates 65,000 Satoshis, we will address that because that means during the downside moves, if Bitcoin rejects 34,000 to test 30,000, that could be an opportunity for some short positions on altcoins. Never short Bitcoin. The apex asset, never want to short Bitcoin. Just stay clear on that. But anyways, I think that is all for today, snipers. That wraps up our video. And I appreciate each and every one of you tuned into our channel, Midnight Update, and we are good to go. I'll see you guys next time. Snipers.